Welcome to the MAC6 Community Connections radio show and podcast with your host, Jennifer Burwell and Kyle McIntosh. MAC6 builds better communities where people and businesses thrive. We are broadcasting live from the MAC6 Entrepreneurial Center in Tempe, Arizona, and will be shining a light on the incredible stories of businesses we work with and how they are serving our broader community. And here is this week's Community Connection. We are inside the MAC6 Entrepreneurial Center, 150,000 square feet of space, including traditional, non-traditional private office suites and a variety of co-working office space solutions, and a unique co-manufacturing space, all in service to growth-oriented entrepreneurs, startups, and mid-market enterprise businesses. Today, we have Yong Lee, the president of and owner of REV77, and hopefully answers to why someone would start a digital marketing company, among many other things. Jen, first, good to see you.
Hello. Welcome, Yong.
Welcome, Yong. Yeah. So first, Yong, tell us a little about yourself. Maybe where'd you grow up? How'd you get from there to here?
I grew up in Florida. So way back when, I grew up in Panhandle, Florida. So it's like a Panama City. There's a phrase I want to say, but it's probably not community-friendly phrase.
Please, feel free.
Can I?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
It's a redneck Riviera. Panama City Beach is known for the girls gone wild, and I was part of that from the sideline, not filming, just for the record. So I grew up out there, went to school in Gainesville. So I lived all over Florida. And then after I graduated, Motorola back in the day was one of those crazy company that was really well known in Phoenix, Arizona area. And they were crazy enough to offer me pretty good salary at the time. So as a software engineer straight out of college, I moved out here and I really, really liked the area. So I just settled here and I lived here forever.
A little less gone wild in Arizona.
Yes.
Yeah. So interesting. Both my mom and my stepfather worked for Motorola, and my grandmother worked on the line building little semiconductor chips before that. So yeah, Motorola had a long history here.
Yeah. I mean, back in the day, it was like a 20-some thousand employees that used to out in the Phoenix area. Then now I think there's maybe a handful, if that.
A few left.
I remember going to Bring Your Kid to Work Day there. And they had like video conferencing. We were talking with Kyle's father the other day about how crazy video conferencing was when the technology first came. And they like webcast the CEO of Motorola at the time from Austin, I think, right? And it was like a big thing. And I really, my parents were in finance, and I realized I don't want to go in finance. And so that was the experience for me. But Motorola played a big part of my childhood. So it's interesting. Yeah.
Very cool.
Part of the reason here today, talk about REV77, your business. What do you guys do?
So we are a digital marketing agency. So we work with a lot of small, medium, and even the enterprises out in all over the U.S. And we also work with a lot of business partners. So they are the one who are making the sales out in the field, and then we help them fulfill some of those orders. So we have two lines of business where we work directly with a company like MAC6, where we are providing the SEO services, and then we also work with other companies that are out there, but they're our channel partners in a way, and they're the one who is making the sale, and then we are the one who is fulfilling on those orders. So we provide whole gamuts of digital marketing services, such as building the websites, SEO, search engine optimization, as well as the pay-per-click, so Google Ads and social media management. So everything to do with the marketing, and we do it all.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's like, for those of us who are not in the day-to-day, it's like the magic that happens behind the scenes to get people to your website that everyone kind of peripherally knows that we need. But it's like so overwhelming as a business owner. I think of like, what do I need to do? What is it? So is there a brief explanation of like the power or importance of SEO and why it's good for your business?
So from an SEO perspective, it's the way people find you, right? So, everyone knows about MAC6 as an example. But for those who may not know, they're not going to search for utilizing some of the key phrases such as MAC6, which is a branded name, right?
Right.
So they're going to looking for co-working space. But if your website do not have, if it doesn't have information that's relevant to co-working space, as well as some of the keywords that's close to that content, then chances are it's not going to rank properly. So which means that Google will not know how to find the information for the searchers. So way to kind of think about it is, one, organizing the information that's relevant to your business, and then make sure that structure is well structured on your website, so that when the Google crawls your website, they know what's what and they know what your website is about. And then once they crawl it, index it, and people search, then they're going to find the information for you. So that entire process by which finding those right traffic for your website is essentially the SEO. So it's very important in some ways.
What's the biggest mistake you see when you start to work with small business owners? Like what's the mistake that they make?
They always have a guy. Right? They always have a guy that knows how to do ABC or XYZ and what have you. And those guys happens to be, like a buzzword pickup here and there. So they kind of know how to speak the language, but reality is that they don't know what they're doing. So because they trust this guy that they have and they think everything is working fine, but reality is that it really doesn't, and it does take a lot of effort. So if you would just kind of think about it from dealing with the Facebook and Google of the world, they hire the best software engineers out there in the world. For you to think that just that this guy can figure out how this stuff work and just make it work overnight, just not going to happen.
Yeah, and it's changing frequently, right?
Absolutely.
So that reminds me of a question I've been curious about. I made a joke in a meeting with our team this last week with my dad, and we were talking about marketing techniques and what he did with his engineering company. And I looked at him and said, yeah, but what did you guys do on Facebook? And so even from the time that you started in your career, I mean, you have to have seen massive shifts in the importance of Facebook, what Google's doing, what to do, what not to do. Like, what are some of the trends that you've seen even over the last year or two? I'm sure there's things changing every day.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the biggest thing would be over the years, there's always like the people that are trying to cheat the system, and they have done it successfully. And they call that, in the industry, they call that black hat. A lot of those things have been eliminated. Otherwise, there's still people out there trying to cheat the system. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to stick with the play by the rules, so to speak, and focus on the right content. So at the end of the day, people are looking for the right information. And if you have the right content and right information, Google will find your content and they're going to present it. Why? Because Google in the business of, one, organizing the information, and then two, providing the experience that their searchers are looking for. Because if the searchers are not finding the information they're looking for, Google goes out of business. So they're going to always find a ways to do that portion of the job better. To do so, if you have the original content, that content does not exist anywhere else in the world, chances are Google will recognize that and they're going to rank you much, much higher than any other garbage content that are out there.
We talk about conscious capitalism around here a lot, and really we could talk about that for a year and never really get through all the topics, but all it is a long-term approach to business instead of a short-term. Call it playing by the rules, but if you're putting junk content out and getting a lot of clicks that nobody cares about, what's the point? Nobody's going to stick around. So that makes a lot of sense that you put the right stuff out, you do it the right way, you're going to have customers, repeat customers, and people that actually care about what you're saying.
That's a really good point, because sometimes we work with some of our clients and they show us the report that they got it from other companies or the guy. And it shows like a number one in, like if I search for XYZ term, then we show up in the first place on the Google search engine page, search results page. But the problem is, if you look at the next layer of a report, how many traffic did it really generated from those keywords? It's nothing, right?
Yeah, sure.
So you have to rank for the right keywords and that are relevant to your business. But chances are people know how to cheat the system as well as they know how to cheat their client. And that's really the thing that we have to look out for. But most small business owners, as well as even the larger ones, they just don't pay attention to those details. And that's where the gotchas happens.
Here, it's a shared value, MAC6 and REV77. Don't cheat the system.
That's right.
We play by the rules. I think you said something that stuck out to me, though, is unique content. Like, that's the key for Google. And so for small business owners, like, like one of the things we do is a co-working space. Well, that's not unique. So how do you generate unique content that's going to really help you stand out in the rankings, if that makes sense, if that's
It does. I would say just understanding what you do and not so much worry about what people might be searching for. So you have to look at those keywords that are relevant to your business as well as to what people are searching for. So utilizing some of those keyword topics and then talk about how you might be different, some of your key differentiators. And that's how you end up generating unique content, right? Because ultimately, the culture that MAC6 has and promotes, as well as the community that it serves, it is very different from its competitor.
Yeah.
So when you combine some of those how people search, as well as meaning the keywords, along with how you do the why you do certain things, which is very unique, when you combine those 2-3 different things together, you're going to end up creating a unique content naturally.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That also feels like I'm so thankful there are people like you in your company, because it's like so overwhelming that to have somebody kind of guide you through, like, this is how you do it. For a couple reasons. That, there's websites that you've been to that like they try to just cram like keywords in weird places, and you're like, this isn't authentic, kind of what you're talking about. But when you read content that makes sense, that's valuable, and you're able to articulate your differentiator, that's just good business anyways. But then to work with someone like you to be able to, for people to find it is powerful.
Yeah. So the only thing that I would correct you on is not to work with the people like me, is the people like my team members. Okay. They're the experts.
There we go. Spoken like a true leader.
Hey, they're the one who's making stuff happen, not me.
Yeah. So let's talk about that for a little bit. What prompted the shift from, being an employee to being a business owner? What pushed you off that ledge to create your own business?
Actually, it was not my choice, to be fair. So back in the day, this was like a latter half of 2018. I got a pink slip. So my employees and that are currently working with me at REV77 and I all got laid off for one reason or another. But that led to, because the previous company that we all used to work for, they pivoted. They decided to discontinue some of the product and services that we used to offer. And they decided to only focus on things that they're really good at, which, by the way, is the right strategy in my opinion. So I supported that. But that led to, all of us getting laid off, and I had to lay off a ton of employees, which wasn't a fun experience.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that gave me an opportunity to start this company in a sense that, at the same time, because they discontinued a bunch of product and services, I had an idea of like, what if I just hire some of my employees and offer the same exact services because we're getting rid of this business anyway. So we did exactly that. So I pulled my team together into the room and said, hey, this is what I'm going to do. If you want to do it, come with me. If not, no hard feelings. I get it. But they're crazy and dumb enough to jump into it. And we started together. And fast forward a year and a half, and we've been doing really well. So that's the real silver lining underneath the getting the pink slip, so to speak.
Had you done anything like this before? Or, I mean, it takes a certain personality to not just jump off the bridge and build the wings on the way down, but to not just stand there and say, holy shit, I'm about to jump. I mean, what?
Are we allowed to say shit? I like that. That's good. Now you just open up the whole vocabulary for me. I like that. But no, I mean, it really was so I'm not I'm by training or by education rather, I'm a software engineer. So by definition, I'm not a risk taker whatsoever. So, I don't pretend to be an entrepreneur either. Not like your dad. Where I don't, so taking a risk and starting my own company, I mean, it's not my part of my DNA, but this was just the right thing to do at the time, just because the fact that I really wanted to keep my team together for one. So that's the main reason why I started the company. And it was just the, right opportunity. So that's the reason I started. And, I think that it was quite a bit of transition in a sense that I didn't know what it's going to be like. So I knew how to run a company because I've done it. So I'm an operator, I'm an engineer, so I understand the products, and I used to be a business development person. So I know how to read a contract, deal, negotiating and all that stuff. It's all easy, but I didn't know how to run a company. I didn't know how to be a boss, so to speak. And the thing that I struggle with the most, to be honest, is not having a manager and not having that really well-defined structure that I've been working under for past 20 years. That's been the biggest issue for me, because one day I just kind of realized like, oh shit, like I don't have a boss anymore. Like, what do I do? It's like as a leader, I knew what type of goals that I need to set for REV77 and how to manage my team and everything else, but how to manage myself without that well-defined structure, not having a boss and everything else. That was like really a struggle for me. And that was really hard because I did not realize how much having that boss or having that manager and guide me. So I was like lucky enough to report under a CEO in the last 2 companies or so. So, I had a full visibility into how the company is operating, how well things are doing, and I had a very strong leader, so they guide me through it. And now that I didn't have that, I didn't know what to do. So I was actually depressed for a little while. I actually thought about quitting after about 3-4 months after starting my company, interesting enough. And because it was really hard. It wasn't easy.
They talk a lot about that, that, it's lonely at the top, and that CEOs, there's someone in our community, Andy Maurer, I think, works with executives and CEOs on mental health for CEOs, because, you're managing down so much, then there's like nobody for you, and you have to be the strong person. You have to be the one with the answer. You have to be the strategy guy. I'm looking at Kyle too, because I'm sure you feel this at some levels as well. And so he really works on like, what self-care are you doing? Like, who are your mentors? How do you surround yourself with others who can relate? Because you can't necessarily, although there are some leaders, but you can't go to your team and be like, I'm having a terrible day. Like, this is going wrong and this is breaking and this. I mean, there's vulnerability is a great leadership characteristic, but on some level, like if you're not with your peers, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So I think you're not alone in that struggle. But so how did you kind of pull yourself out of that?
It's like one of those things where I recognized it because there was a few times where, for those individuals or the friends who know me, like they know that I'm not a kind of person who get depressed or have anxiety or stressed out and those kind of things, because I'm pretty well. I do really well on those kind of situations. But in this particular case, I recognize the fact that it was a little different, because there were a few times where I was literally sitting in the office, suite 126. I had almost like an anxiety attack, and I had to just get out. So I got in my car, I just drove around the town. I did that actually several times. And that's when I realized, oh shit, like this is for real. Like I need to do something about this. So I reached out to some of my previous mentors and some of the people that I respect and some of the business leaders, and they're the CEOs and then the owner of the company themselves. I spoke with them and they, this one guy just basically told me, dude, like you're professionally depressed. I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, it's actually a term. It's like, you're at the job, you're not satisfied with your job, and you need to do something about that, because that could really turn into something bad. And that's when I realized that. And then I struggled through that for about, 2-3 weeks, so about a month or so. And then one day I just kind of woke up, and it's just one of those, one of those moments that you just kind of like a light bulb just goes into your head. And it's like, God, like I'm so stupid. Because I realized that instead of trying to find a new boss, like that my customers are my bosses, like my partners, my business partners are my bosses. Like it's such a cliche thing to say when somebody says like, we are a customer-centric company, right? But people say it all the time. I mean, shit, like I used to say it all the time too. But I literally did not know what that really meant until that actually happened. And then once I realized that I need to shift my focus to my new bosses, my clients and people that I work for, and taking pressure off of their shoulders so that I can solve problems for them. And that's when I kind of like refocus as to like what I really want to do and how I want to shift my company. And it was a kind of an interesting journey through that point and after, just because our monthly billing revenue-wise increased tremendously after that. Because I started building a trust with my partners, as well as so they're selling more for us, as well as the clients that we're used to work with, some of the larger ones. So instead of shifting their marketing budget to another company, they're sending it to us. Because that I built that trust and I made them look good. Right?
Yeah, of course.
And that's something that I was really good at when I work in a corporate environment, is taking pressure. I used to say, taking monkey off of my boss's back and put it on mine, because I can handle it.
It's a good strategy.
Yeah, so that worked out really well.
Yeah.
That's an amazing insight that you had. Would you, If you could go back and change anything, would you? Or would you still go through it and just wake up one day with that epiphany? Or
Well, if I knew that from the beginning, I would have definitely done it a little different. I would have probably drank a little less around that time. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely an interesting journey for one. And I would say when people, the business leaders that are out there, when they say the like how importance of being a customer-centric company, at least like now I get it. Like I know what that means.
sure.
Yeah, and it speaks to the power of just mindset, right? You just shifted the way you thought about something, and then you saw tangible results. And Kyle and I get caught up in this as well. Is like we say a lot of things that are cliches as well, but when you truly mean it and it comes from an authentic place, and you can show and demonstrate why, I think it's really powerful. But sometimes even in our writing, we get caught up in like everyone says this, which probably is some feedback that you have for us in some of our content. But when you really mean it and you get it, it's powerful and lands an audience for sure.
One more curiosity question about this progress journey you're going through, that you've been through. How much of it was visible for your employees? And do they see now the progression of where we were to where we are today? I mean, were they experiencing any of this with you?
No. So that's a really good question. So during, you can tell like I'm kind of uncomfortable just with that question because I'm like shifting my bodies around and stuff. But no, because I mean, just like Jen said earlier, right? Like it is a lonely at the top. And one of the lessons that I learned is that you have to be very transparent and you have to be in open communication with your employees and everything else. But at the same time, there's, moments in time where you kind of have to internalize it and you have to kind of think things through, because otherwise, the creates a little bit of fear. Because it's not something that they can control either, right? So they do know now, because I shared with them about 3-4 months later. I did let them know that, hey, like I literally just graphed it out and said, hey, here's my mental state at the peak, at the bottom, and then how I'm climbing it back up. And I share a lot of that stuff, so they know everything that I have gone through. But at the time, no, I definitely did not. And something I also learned during the process was that yet another cliche thing, which is that people always say you have to have a good supporting staff, right? Like you have to have like top employees that is really helping you and this and that. One thing I did realize is that I had that, but everyone has a different perspectives, and their perspectives going to be, and meaning the priorities and their what's important to them versus me and the company and those kind of things is going to be always very, very different. Only way to be on the same page, like really be on the same page, will be to over communicate and really let them know what's going on. So since that point, I have been actually since the day one, at least from a financial side of things, I share, everything with my employees so they know exactly some of the cash flow issues or challenges or whatever we're going through, so they know exactly what's happening, so that I don't have to explain to them as to, hey, like, can you just use a little less napkins over there, right? So that we all have a right attitude or the right perspective on things. But, so those are some of the things that I had to realize. But it's not easy, though.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great learning. And what I've heard from other leaders is when you do open your books or you are more transparent, people kind of rally around because they have that context that they need. So like they're in it with you, right? So they are using less napkins or finding more ways to be resourceful. Do you see that with your team as you've shared more information with them?
Absolutely. I mean, that's why they're still here, and that's why I treat them like my family.
Yeah.
And they know I do. I think they do. But I'm also one of those tough dad and boss where I don't tell them I love them every day. Because when I do tell them, like I want it to mean something. So this is one of those situations where I don't praise them that often, but at least I'm doing it indirectly like publicly right now. So like my team's awesome.
And they're all listening right now. Right? Yeah.
So I'd like to get back to more, questions about the business and who you serve, but just to go on that a little bit, do you have something that you would consider a way to describe your culture? Here's what our culture is. I mean, it sounds like you've got at least analogies to, you've got this tough dad leadership. And when you say something, it means something, but it sounds like you've got a team that is able to rally around this concept you're building and really, put themselves into it in their lives.
Yeah, I would say two things I would say. Like one would be we really do give a shit about what we do. So I actually took that phrase from my last boss, Tim Fagan, who, someone that I really got to know really well over the years, as well as in a way, he was a good mentor to me as well. And some of the things that he's used to say all the time is, it's like the difference will be between person who gives a shit and don't give a shit is the fact that people who give a shit really go above and beyond what they do, and they really care. They get really passionate about it, right? And I kind of pull that playbook out of his and put it into ours, and that we make sure that one, we give a shit, and then we talk about like why we actually do give a shit, right? And that really is a different thing. And then that is because our foundation is built on almost like a family-like culture, in a sense that, the analogy that I always use will be that, let's say if you are walking in your office or hallway or something and there's a piece of paper fall on the floor, would you stop and pick it up and toss it in the garbage, or would you just walk past it? Well, this was your home. Of course, you're going to pick it up no matter who dropped it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're not talking to my wife then.
but in the office space area or at work, no one's going to do that, right? Unless there's somebody watching, then yeah, I'm going to do it because I want the recognition and so on. So that's something that I kind of talk about all the time and repeatedly. And I think our team gets it. But again, kind of going back to what I was saying earlier about the having that same perspective, it's not easy. It does take a lot of time. It's not something that you can just tell them, like, oh, this is my culture and this is the culture of REV77 and let's go with it.
Right.
Like you have to like repeatedly do it over and over and over communicate. Otherwise, they're just not going to get it.
Right.
Nor would they care, really.
Yeah. Building culture is consistent daily activity, right?
Absolutely.
Always marching towards your values and demonstrating it. It's not something, and I love your approach because, it really is a holistic view. It can't be a top-down, like, this is our culture, this is what we're doing. And providing that context really helps people buy in and understand. So sorry, Kyle, I'm going to go work for Yong now. Just kidding.
Good luck.
I know nothing about digital marketing, so maybe I don't have a job. Okay.
Neither do I, actually.
Yeah. How is that actually? That is a really interesting, so for such a technical business,
mm-hmm.
like when you have experts, like personally, I have control issues and I'm owning that. So like to have employees who know so much about something so technical that's so core to my business and not being able to like completely understand it, which maybe you do understand it. I don't know. But like, how is that?
So one would be, I don't have just a guy. Like I have people that know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can reference, if you remember my DISC assessment,
mm-hmm.
I'm all about the quality. I'm all about the details,
yes.
right? And because I do have that engineering background, understanding technology, understanding how things work is pretty easy for me.
Yeah.
So while I may not be creative enough to come up with a slogan or, drawing a logo for someone or come up with a, killer design for a website. So I don't do those kind of work because I just can't. I just don't have that part of the brain.
Sure.
However, understanding like how things work and understanding how Google operates and Facebook and how those algorithms may operate and those kind of things, I do get those. So when I have a good coach, which will be my employees teaching me how stuff works, and then me technical aspect of it, and I also know how to dumb it down, for the lack of better words, when I'm speaking to some of my audience, which will be business owners and sometimes the VP of marketing, CMOs and such. Something that I've always been good at that because I know how to do that part. Like we don't have any salesperson that's within my company. Like I'm the only real sales guy per se. So because of those things, I can actually learn and know how things work. And if I don't, then I'll just sit there and do some Googling myself and learn how things work. And then I ask questions to my employees and they'll figure it out for me.
Interesting. So you have a good grasp on the technical piece. It's the creative, which I think you have some creativity in you, I'm sure.
I don't know about that.
But that's just so interesting. So I'm thinking like 5 things at one time. But if we transition a little bit, speaking about your team culture and being a business owner, for all of us, March, the world changed, right? And we were all on some level greatly impacted with COVID-19. What impact did you see in your business, if any? How have you been surviving? I don't even know how to frame this question. How have you been surviving COVID?
A couple of different ways. So back in mid-March, 2 of our largest clients called me same day and canceled. Just because, they're into digital marketing, right? When the business, we're in the business of marketing things, and 2 of our biggest clients happens to be pretty large healthcare providers. So they own a bunch of hospitals, both organizations do. So naturally, they're starting to focus more on the fighting COVID-19, not necessarily trying to market and trying to get the orthopedic surgeries done or back surgeries and bariatrics and those kind of things. So they no longer need to market those services. So literally like a same day, I got 2 phone calls back to back and they're pausing everything.
Did you get in your car and drive around?
That time I actually did not. I just punched the wall. I'm just kidding. But yeah, it wasn't a fun month, I guess. The entire month of March was kind of interesting. But luckily we do have other part of the business. So it wasn't like our business is solely on Google Ads. So we do have a SEO, which, by definition is something that you have to just keep going, not something pause and go again and pause and go, not like a pay-per-click side of things. So that side of the business, we're doing really well still. And even those, so I would say, to answer your question, past couple of months been very interesting, very hard. And because we also gone through some issues with trying to get some help from government, the PPP loan program, like that didn't really work for us. So we have been kind of sort of like on our own in that regards. But yeah, making a long story short, like we survived because of other businesses that are out there. And luckily we didn't put all of our eggs in one basket. So that allow us to, I wouldn't say first quarter of 2020, we're thriving with the growth and growing super fast. So that slowed down tremendously.
Sure.
But we are now getting phone calls again from previous clients that we're working with. Because now we're just getting ready to get back into things. Most likely, I would guess like end of 3rd quarter, 4th quarter time.
Nice. And from all the reports I've seen in the economic reports that have been coming out, like online shopping is like the one thing that's been increasing.
That's right.
So potentially, more customers are going to be looking for your services. So hopefully that would be good news. So one thing that I appreciated, we got to know each other a little bit through Zoom, like everybody going through this pandemic. And you were a part of our 5-part leadership series. Is there anything, not to put you on the spot, but is there anything that was helpful for you in that series, or what was your takeaway? If you can remember, it was a couple months ago.
It was a couple months ago.
I'm trying to frame this so it's not just putting you on the spot, but I'm just curious if you have any feedback about it, because I really enjoyed it, but I'm not sure what everybody else really felt about it.
Yeah. No, I would say the things that I learned and I think that I liked about it, one would be shamefully learning more about our community members through the process.
Yeah.
Right? So I met through a Zoom meeting, conference calls, I guess. Started learning a little more of people's names and so on, because I'm not the most outgoing guy in the community. So I don't stop and chat with people because I'm very like goal-oriented. So I just get my water, coffee, boom, I go back.
Gotta go. Yep.
That's right.
I get it.
Yeah. So that was, I would say, the one takeaway. And then the other one would be just learning about how to kind of think through like whether it's empathy or other things, meaning like interact with your employees or understanding yourself too, because we all took that assessment, and how to read those assessments and how to apply those to within my side of the business and with my employees too, because a couple of my employees took those tests and they were still participating in it, and I got to read their. I already knew a lot about them, but that just kind of gave me more insights as to what make them tick, if you will.
Yeah.
And I really like that aspect of it because I love those kind of tests.
Yeah.
I remember when we first started doing those assessments, and my sister was working with me at the time, and we both took them, and I just remember looking at each other like, oh, that's why. That's why you're like that. And it like you said, I know this person. I've known this person my whole life, but you see, I don't know. I guess some of it's just articulated confirmation of other stuff, but some of it's like, wow, I never knew that's why you were motivated in that way. And that's why you say something in that way that is because you really believe in a different way than I do, which is super cool. And I'm glad that we know that now. So we're not, beating each other up and sibling rivalry or whatever. But
yeah. To give you an example, so Kyle really enjoys confrontation as a way of communication. His sister is the exact opposite. And it was however many years old you guys were when you just learned this. So you can only imagine their childhood. It would be exciting.
It was good times.
Yeah. It's awesome.
So there are presumably other companies that are out there that do variations of what you do.
Oh, absolutely. Thousands of them.
What makes you different? What makes REV77? I mean, as we're seeing the economy pick up, or even if it's whatever, the online sales are still going like crazy, and a new healthcare provider or somebody else comes to you, what makes them go with you?
Yeah. I would say this, right? So whether it's us or another company, like another competitor, whoever, at the end of the day, we are all utilizing similar system, meaning we're getting an impression share from Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, and there's a few other variations of platforms that are out there where we get the traffic from. So in terms of the technical aspect of things, there's only so much you can do. Yes, there's a ton of stuff. If you especially know what you're doing, you're not going to see the whole lot of variation between company number A, who knows what they're doing, versus company number 2, who also knows what they're doing. Difference then becomes people that you're interacting with, right? So, do they ask the right question? Do they really try to understand your business and your goal for the 2020 or 2021 and where you're trying to get to? Because I'm really big on motivation, motive, as to clearly if a sales guy, gal, salesperson wants to make a sale, they're motivated by one thing and one thing only, which is they want you to sign the dotted line so that they can get their commission and they move to the next spot or next target. Whereas people that are on the operation side of things, they're motivated by efficiency because that's how they're being measured. So I'm big on the how people are being measured and why people are being measured that way. And because that ultimately motivates them. And if I know their motive, then I can position things the way I want to so that I can get my way too with my own motivation, right? So because of that, which is really tough to figure out company A versus company B. But the reason why we're different is one, as I mentioned, we don't have a salesperson on our staff. I'm the only one. So naturally, I want to make money because we're in the business of making money, right? But at the same time, the reason why we're different is the fact that I'm not out there just to sell because I'm an engineer. I want to solve problems. I'm not out there to just shove, you need an SEO, you need a new website and blah, blah, blah. I'm trying to find the right solution for you so that one, you stay with us and because you're happy and because you want to. It's not because I did A, B, C, and this and that. So perfect example would be, I was working on one of my clients' website / email this morning. And one of my employees found out that because his email just went down because we launched a new website and everything was good. And then as soon as we launched the new website, his email wasn't working properly, even though we didn't touch it. We didn't do anything weird with his domain / DNS. That turns out that his previous company did something quote unquote shady, made things a little more complicated. So his emails were being routed to their server first, and then it goes to the server on the GoDaddy side of things, right? So in what you should have done is just keep it at GoDaddy so that it stays clear. But they wanted to have that stickiness so that they can control things, which was totally unnecessary, but that's something they decided to do. So you're not going to get those type of shadiness or we really look out for our clients and their best interests because ultimately we want our clients to be happy so they can come back to us with a renewal. And that's what I really want to go after. And that's what we really celebrate.
We get it, Yong. We've already signed the contract to work with you guys.
Yeah, but that 6 months contract renegotiations happening soon. So we're gonna stay on tap.
So on that, like, we've had a couple digital marketing companies that they've been great and done some good work, but there's so many out there, and there's so many that do quote unquote shady things, right? You hear the stories, like things just stop working, or you think you own all this stuff and then you don't, and it disappears, and like there's just nightmare scenarios. So do you have what are some good questions that a small business owner should ask someone like yourself to make sure that those things don't happen? Or like, what are some things to look at? We just talked about, I understood like most of what you were talking about with the email situation, but is there like red flags? Like are there any red flags to watch out for?
Similar to what I was saying earlier about, people that you're interacting with, do they really care about you, or do they care about your marketing dollars?
Right.
Right. And are they more of a short-term thinker, or are they long-term thinkers? Because the level of question they ask would be very different from the people that are interacting with, like from that perspective. So I would say, people who, as a business owner, of course, like the reason you want to hire someone is because you don't know anything about that particular topic and you don't have time to learn yourself.
Right.
I get it. If that's the case, then do just enough research to know some of the buzzwords, so you don't get too hung up on those buzzwords, for one, because let's face it, the people who are selling these products and services, and they just wanted to make the sale, but then chances are they're not going to dig that much deeper into that topic. So they're just going to use the buzzwords only, right? Like cloud this, cloud that, and yada, 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 right? So, as long as you know how to decipher some of those things, it helps. And then I would say second thing would be just understand the people that you're working with or interacting with. Do they really care about what I do as a business owner? And do they really care about how this will, or whatever they're doing, will generate the leads that the companies are needing, because that's how they will grow. So understanding some of those questions, so, what type of question they're really asking is what I would say.
That's such great insight for, hiring anyone really, or any relationship, is really thinking about what kind of questions, paying attention to what kind of questions. Because sometimes you're in meetings and people are using all these buzzwords and talking about me. But if they're not talking about you, that says something, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And then sometimes they overuse those terms and make things overly complicated just to make the sale. And that's the reason why you have to know a little bit. You have to educate yourself a little bit so that you can speak the similar language as them.
Yeah.
It's been so interesting because it kind of spans two topics that we've been talking about: your team and this expertise, and just, your strategy of how you're communicating with going after new clients, and the experience of working with you and Colin, I guess, in the beginning. And one of the rewarding parts of doing what we do, I'd say, is seeing people be in a space that we provide that love what they do. Yeah. And it was so much easier to just be able to trust you without you having to say, trust me, because I could get that feel from somebody that was working with you every day. Right. And it goes to how you sell things, how you communicate things. But I think a part of that is coming across as that culture that you've built of just, I would guess, I don't want to put words in Colin's mouth, but I guess he loves doing what he does and shows up here because of that every day. That energy comes out when we're having a communication about marketing for MAC6. It has nothing to do with, why he necessarily gets up out of bed every morning. He's not thinking about MAC6 specifically, I guess, but that really did come across.
Well, that's great to hear. Sometimes you end up drinking your own Kool-Aid. So you think that you're doing the right thing, but I appreciate the feedback because I sometimes do question myself, like, am I doing the right thing, or am I asking the right question to my clients? And does it really come across as someone that I really care about those things, right? Because there's a few times where I had to make tough decisions where client wasn't all that happy, but I know for a fact that client is wrong, right? Because they are flat out wrong and they're being unfair about it. But even then, I trying to do the right thing, and I let go of quite a bit of money, and I didn't cash the check, even though they sent us the check. I told them I'm not going to cash it for those reasons. So, doing the right thing is really hard sometimes. But when you're trying to build a company culture, and I want to let my team know that this is the reason why we're doing it, and here's the reason why we are letting things go. Sometimes it's hard, but once they get it, like I was saying earlier, you end up being passionate about what you do, and then they really do give a shit, and that makes a big difference.
Yeah, and that's like the long-term perspective that you have too, right? Like in the short term, this is a really hard, difficult situation. Like as a business owner, not cashing a check is a really hard
I still think about it.
thing not to do, but for the long term and the greater good. And your employees are always watching, right? So if you say you have this culture, you have these values, it's what you do in those hard moments that really show. And I'm sure we'll return tenfold.
That's right.
Than the amount of that check.
That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah. Report back in maybe a couple years. We'll see.
So what return tenfold? And there's a future for, you've learned so much, you're growing as a company. I guess the two ends of that I'm curious about are where are you heading as a business? And maybe answer that. And then my other question though is, if you were looking at Yong 2.0, young buck, trying to start out a company, what advice might you give somebody who's just starting?
Yeah, it's good. Great questions. I would say for latter half 2020. So, we did have a really great plan starting 2020. Unfortunately, just like everyone else. Exactly. Everything changed and a lot. That being said, I would say we really wanted to focus on this community, meaning one reason or another, we don't have a whole lot of clients in the state of Arizona. Like all of our clients are like all over the U.S. So like we have clients in Seattle, Atlanta, Georgia, a ton of them, and all over the Texas as well. But we don't have only like less than a handful in the state of Arizona. So I wanted to focus a little more on Arizona, which is the reason why I thought this was a great opportunity because it's something that I just never been in part of, like, city of Tempe and everything else. So I think that's going to continue to be our goal for remaining of second half of 2020 will be that, focus more on the state that we live in for one, and then continue to focus on the two verticals that we're going after, which is healthcare and legal. And we do really well in that regards, or in those two verticals. And we will probably continue to focus on those areas. The other question was...
New entrepreneur thinking about doing this. What advice might you have?
So a couple of things I learned, which I kind of shared earlier, which is like the people, right? And then the other part of it to me was thinking a little more positive, meaning, something, yet again, the cliche thing where thinking positivity is there's a book about it, there's seminars and all kinds of stuff, but common sense tell you that, yes, that's easy. And sure, of course, you got to think positive, right? Like nothing is bad's going to happen and everything is good will happen. But as a business owner, I realized that, especially as someone like myself who used to be an engineer, so I'm always trying to break things down as to why something will break or not work and yada, yada, yada. So I'm naturally a very pessimistic. I'm not an optimistic person whatsoever. But over the course of 2019, I would say that I changed quite a bit from that perspective. So I became very like positive thinking, and especially the areas where I just have no control over. I was like, you know what, I'm not going to worry about it because I know good things will happen no matter what. Because I've done really well, and we have done really well, and it's going to continue to go that direction. So I stopped thinking. I guess I would, do definitely less of breaking things down and trying to overanalyze the situation and trying to believe a little more as to like some of the positive thing will happen. And even this year, like I was in a really difficult situation company-wise back in March, as well as some of the consequence events that happened thereafter with some of our clients and some of the legal issues and those things. And everything worked out positively. And I knew that it's going to happen. Sure, I was stressed and everything else, but I didn't have to drink too much. So that was a very positive thing.
There you go. Yeah, I think it's just maintaining that, for me at least, it's maintaining that belief, that my favorite saying, one of my favorite sayings is everything will be okay in the end. If it's not okay, it's not the end, right? It's just another door. But that's what I find about a lot of leaders and business owners is you have to have this positive optimism. You have to believe that something good's going to come out of it. Otherwise, what's the point? And the day-to-day and all of the responsibility of being a business owner can become overwhelming.
Yeah.
So you're so impressive to me of just, I recognized I was going through this and then I just thought about it and changed my mindset. Like, if you could bottle that, that's your next $1 billion idea, because so many people work and struggle and struggle.
And unfortunately, it's, like a lot of the lesson learned moments for me, I don't think, so I read a ton of books, right? Like those self-improvements, business books and what have you. I just always read those nonfiction books, but it's one thing to read it and take away a few things from those books. It's another thing to live through it and learn it. So unfortunately, like even if I go back and say, as I'm just like filing for that LLC paperwork and what have you, even if I told myself, go back in time and tell myself like, hey, this is what's going to happen. This is what you need to realize and yada, yada. I would have just said, yeah, right.
Right.
It's like, yeah, dude, like I'll figure it out. Don't worry about it, right? Like I just don't think that I'm going to get it unless I'm faced with it and live through it.
It's not so much of a joke that this is the most expensive kind of MBA that you could get.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
And sadly, I have an MBA, but it's useless.
Yeah, but it's so true. You have to go through it to get, to learn. And sometimes there's some pain that has to come along with it because for it to really stick. So, yeah.
But it's worth it, though.
Yeah, it definitely is. Oh, I had a good question for you. Oh, what is your favorite book, or what have you been reading recently?
Recently, I did not. So I think I shared this with you, either with Scott or you, and that past couple of months, every time I open a book, my mind is going somewhere else.
Oh yeah, you did say that.
Yeah, so I could not really like sit there and I finish a book. So I purposely told myself, like, you know what, like just take it easy. So I've been Netflixing a lot. So I've been catching up on a lot of the shows and Disney Plus on some of those TV shows that they just released on Star Wars and so on. So I've been doing that more of, less reading.
Interesting. I've been doing the same thing. I've been listening to more podcasts. Like every time I go to a book, my brain goes away, but I can listen to podcasts. So I've gotten into more of those, probably for similar reasons.
It's interesting as I go through stages of what type of reading, fiction, nonfiction. When I'm going fiction, I'll almost get these bigger insights sometimes of this conceptual idea. Like, that never could have been written in a way in a nonfiction business book that I would have taken down as a tactical way to do something. But it's interesting going back and forth and seeing like, all right, tactics and then like concepts that you just don't even think about between how we interact with each other and like character development or any of this stuff that it is interesting.
Yeah. So now that I know a little bit about you, Kyle, from these classes that we've been taking, like that makes sense to me because that will never happen for me.
I know.
Based on my personality type.
I'm glad it's not just me because I'm sitting here like, that doesn't happen for me.
So I was trying to reference which hat that was. I think it was a white hat, is it? From Scott's 6 hat.
Six hats. Yeah.
Between 5 and 7.
So I have kind of a off the wall question for you. What is one thing that people are surprised to learn about you that they wouldn't think?
Probably because I would say I actually do have a little bit of personality.
They're surprised to know that?
Well, because so this happens more on the corporate side of the world, so where I come across as very cold, and I got once pulled into an HR because I didn't react. Like I had too much of a poker face in the meeting, and because a couple of my employees are complaining about certain things, and I didn't react the way they thought I would react. So they went to HR about it, and then even the director of HR was laughing at me for it. It's like, dude, you're put that poker face down. Be a human.
Show some emotion.
That's right. Yeah. But I would say that would be probably the main thing that a lot of people say. It's like, hey, he's not that bad.
Yeah. I can relate. Sometimes people, when they first meet me, say I'm unapproachable. And I think it's a similar thing. Like I have a goal in mind. I'm walking for a place. I don't really stop and chat. And no, I'm nice. You just have to get my attention.
It was a realization I had just in the last year is that my face I'm circling, is not portraying what's going on inside. And I thought, I wear my heart on my sleeve, and you could say all these things, but everyone all of a sudden is telling me, no, you have a poker face that I had no idea I had, and I should have been playing poker all this time or something. But no, I'm sure you've seen where it's become an advantage to be able to share that with people in times, or not if it's appropriate.
Yeah. Well, so I sometimes use that in both sense. So in the business world, it helps when negotiating, so I don't react to anything. So it's tough for them to read what's going on in my head. And in one-on-one employee-employer manager type of situation, I sometimes now trying to be a little more, not emotional, but a little more dramatic about things and trying to exaggerate a little bit, just so that they know what's going on. Otherwise, like with my current employee, because they know me so well, so I can be a little more human, if you will.
Sure.
Yeah, for like Kyle, so he had this, he really, I think maybe still believes it.
Am I smiling right now? I'm happy.
That his emotions are all over him. So, but as his employee, I would be sharing something and he wouldn't have a reaction. And so my interpretation and what I told myself is, he just doesn't care about that. And that was not at all the case. Like he had all sorts of caring and thoughts and feelings inside. So it was a great, revelation for both of us to realize, he really has been caring. He's just forgot to smile or show the emotion, but good.
I think we're about wrapped up, but Yong, would you like to share how we can find you, REV77, online, whether it's social or website or any of that?
Yeah, so the digital company that we are, if you just type in REV77, REV77, you'll find us. But our homepage is rev77.com.
Great. Okay, well, thank you, Yong, for being on the show today and a great conversation. Until next time, we're off to continue building better communities where purpose and profit unite. And thank you for being an awesome part of the community.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the MAC6 Community Connection radio show and podcast with your hosts, Jennifer Burwell and Kyle McIntosh. We are off to continue building better communities where people and businesses thrive and telling the stories of capitalism as a force for good through the businesses that we serve. To be a part of the conversation, join us for a tour of the MAC6 Entrepreneurial Center in Tempe, Arizona, or find us at mac6.com.